On the morning of their 17th birthdays, I gave each of my children a kiss and a hug, and I looked into their eyes because you know how 17-year-olds are. If they're not looking right at you, you're never sure. And I said to them, "Happy birthday. I just want you to know that in 364 more days, I will no longer be legally responsible for you. In the eyes of the law, you will be an adult and on your own. That means I will no longer be required to provide you with food or shelter, money, clothes, a car, or a college education. So if I give you any of these things, I will do so not because I have to, but because I love you and I choose to." Surprisingly, my statement must have also affected my IQ because they increasingly sought out my advice on all sorts of things in that penultimate year before their liberation. But what I really wanted them to understand was that their next birthday would be marked by something far more monumental than pulling another candle out of the box for their birthday cake. It would be for them, and for me also, a major rite of passage, one that I hoped would change their perspective about our relationship. 18 years can seem like a long time. Not only is it the length of time between a child's birth and legal emancipation, it is often the number of years one would spend in school earning a non-professional master's degree, one not associated with credentials or licensing. Sadly, statistically, almost half of all first marriages do not last 18 years. And the Hebrew word for life, kai, has a numerical value of 18. So today, you see, we hear about this woman bent over for 18 long years, bent over for a lifetime. What would she have even seen day after day as she made her way forward? You know, probably a lot of dirt and litter, maybe others' feet as they shuffled by her, or small animals that maybe darted across her path, but really probably not much else. And she likely ventured out only to places she was already familiar with and where it wouldn't matter too much that she was legally unclean, and so she would have been shunned. You know, we are told that it was a spirit that had crippled her, but it seems to me that her disfigurement couldn't help but debilitate her spirit. For whatever ailment she suffered from impacted far more than her physical condition. She didn't even dare make her way to the front of the synagogue. Maybe she couldn't even see where Jesus was, right? It is Jesus who sees her, calls her over, and proclaims her not healed, but free at last, and then touches her, and in that act of touching, restores her to community. And in her first moment of freedom, she stands up straight, and I like to have this picture in my head that maybe she even raises her arms. So she raises her arms and her eyes, and she praises God. We might say that her perspective was literally changed immediately. It was such a joyous occasion that we might be initially taken aback by the synagogue leader who calls Jesus out for breaking the law by healing on the Sabbath. But you know, as someone who has lived a good part of her life making sure that rules are in place and they're attended to, I have a certain amount of sympathy for his perspective as well. After all, keeping the Sabbath is one of the Big Ten, and we don't call them the 10 suggestions. They are the 10 commandments. Although her situation was horrible, it was not immediate or life-threatening. Couldn't Jesus have waited till the next day and then found her? If the synagogue leader allowed this act to pass by and said nothing, then what? What would come next? Was this the beginning of a slippery slope that he wouldn't be able to control? Right? Where would he draw the line? He was responsible for making sure the law was kept, that the status quo remained, and everybody knew what to do and what to expect. What a difference perspective makes. The crowd rejoiced because they had witnessed a miracle from God. And the leader of the synagogue saw only a man breaking the law. I don't believe for 1 minute that the leader of the synagogue was right. But I do believe we would be wrong if we didn't at least stop to consider the possibility that he wasn't just throwing his weight around, that there might be some merit to his unanticipated reaction to this miracle of healing, that his perspective should not be just dismissed. I read something this week by Richard Rohr, who made a really excellent point about this kind of dualistic thinking. He wrote, most of us tend to cut every new idea or situation in half and eliminate that which we do not understand or things that are beyond our present experience. Not only do we divide the field of the moment, but we almost immediately judge one half to be superior and one half to be inferior. We compare, and as soon as we compare, we compete. It is easy and so tempting to fall into this mind thing called dualistic thinking, right? Where you divide and separate and conclude what's up or down. We make a judgment about what's in or out, who's with me or against me, what's right and what's wrong. It reminds me of a boss I once had. He wasn't always right, but he was never wrong. Perhaps one thing we can glean from this story is a new perspective about cultivating perspective. I wonder what it would be like to train our spiritual eyesight to look through the lens of mercy and justice instead of just judgment, and consider every person, idea, and action first with compassion. What if, like Jesus, we learn to love others not because of who they are, but because of who we are? We are all and equally the beloved of God. Richard Rohr calls that spiritual maturity. I say it might just look a lot like meeting people where they are, which is what we are called to do and to be as a church. So I ask you, what do you think? Amen.